Welcome to livingpianos.com. I'm Robert Estrin with such an exciting discovery for you. This, believe it or not, is the piano owned by Thomas Edison. This piano was bought by Thomas Edison in 1890. It's a Steinway Model B. Notice it has 85 keys, as many Steinways did at that time. And the piano has had some restoration, but is largely original in the case and other artifacts about it that are so fascinating, you're not going to believe it. Now, of course, everybody knows that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but he also invented the phonograph. And it all grew from technologies from the telegraph, and we have an expert that's going to be here later to tell you more about that. But first, I'm just going to play a little bit on this piano for you so you can hear this instrument. Then I'm going to call in the person who found this piano and the home that I'm sitting in, and that will be in just a moment. Listen to this instrument from 1890, and this instrument was perhaps the first piano ever recorded. Now we get to hear it with modern recording and a little bit of Debussy, the first movement of Dr. Gradus ad Parnassum. So there's a little bit of history. Now I want you to listen to a recording made on perhaps this piano from the 1800s. Listen to a little bit of this on the original phonograph of Edison on the wax cylinder recording. So you can hear quite a difference in the recording quality, but isn't it remarkable that the recordings could be made so long ago? So what's unbelievable sitting next to this piano of Thomas Edison, I've actually got the original invoice here that you can see from 1890 from Steinway, and a letter that Thomas Edison wrote to Steinway from the laboratory of Thomas A. Edison, Orange, New Jersey, June 2nd, 1890, Steinway and Sons. Gents, I've decided to keep your grand piano. For some reason unknown to me, it gives better results than any so far tried. Please send bill with lowest price. Yours, Thomas A. Edison. Is that unbelievable? Well, you might wonder where this piano came from, and I'm very, very pleased to introduce to you someone who you may have seen before here on livingpianos.com, the Steinway hunter, Bob Friedman, who located this piano and whose home in upstate New York I am in right now. Bob, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you. I live here, and it's nice that you came to visit me.
Absolutely. I'm so used to saying that to guests, but here we are in your place.
In our place with Mr. Edison's piano.
Now, a lot of people might not know that you are the Steinway hunter who perhaps found and sold more Steinways than perhaps anyone ever. I don't know if that's true, but it's arguably true, wouldn't you say?
I'd say that I haven't stopped for close to 50 years now. So if I get up to bat every day and do this until the big leagues close, then maybe that will be true.
Well, you know, I know there's so many great stories in The Steinway Hunter, your book, which is a fabulous read. But tell us about this. How did you come upon this piano?
Interestingly enough, it was put online on an estatesale.com in Huntington, Long Island.
Did they even know what they had?
They knew what they had, but they didn't know the value in the history of the instrument. And after all the research was done and all the paperwork was confirmed that it was Thomas Edison's piano, the one that was in his laboratory music room from 1890 when he purchased it new from Steinway until 1929, I bought the piano.
There you go. And do you have, what are your plans with this? I know here it is in your living room, which is awesome.
Well,
but I know that you have so many pianos coming and going. Over there is an unbelievable Sommer. You've never seen anything like it. It might be in a future Living Pianos video. I can't even describe what that piano is. But I wonder what your plans are. This should be in a museum or something, shouldn't it?
We're hoping to do a Smithsonian documentary, and then to try and find a home for it in a special place in some museum that will like to house the piano.
That would be awesome. Now, I understand the New York Times was here and also did a write-up on the piano. And
we made some discoveries about the instrument. Thomas Edison was nearly 100% deaf, and the only way he could hear his instruments in his music boxes were to bite into the instrument. It just so happens that Edmund Morris, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer and did the last biography in 2019, he completed it on Thomas Edison, wrote in his book that Edison would bite his piano also. Mm-hmm. And the proof was really not out there, but it was, I can't say hearsay, but it was information that he'd researched over his life, and he put it in his book. Well, we made that discovery, or should I say, a very good associate of mine who is an historian for Edison found the bite marks in the piano right there. And I called up James Barron, who's a staff writer for the New York Times, a very well-known staff writer. And the minute he heard that, he said, I'd like to do a story on the piano.
Absolutely. And a lot of people might not realize that the reason why he would bite it is because sound travels through solid much, much more readily than through the air. So your teeth are a fantastic conductor of sound. Because it seems kind of crazy. People think, why would he bite his piano and his phonograph? That's the reason.
Well, he actually took a picture of my wife Ronnie and Charles, the person who discovered it, and myself, with a piece of wood in between the bite marks here and the piano, and played the piano, and it goes up into your head. Your head feels like a tuning fork.
Yes, exactly right.
It's really amazing. And that's how Edison heard his pianos.
Thank you so much, Bob, for inviting me in, for one thing, and allowing me to play this historical piano. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it also.
Continue on here.
We're having a good time here.
Great. So we also have today a wonderful historian who knows a tremendous amount. He's a musician and he's a piano technician, and he also has an incredible, awesome collection of early phonographs going back to the 1800s. And he can tell us a little bit about the technology. And because he has the unique perspective of piano technician and also Edison historian, he's going to shed a lot of light. So I'm really pleased to present to you Charles Fromer, who's going to tell us more about this piano and the technology of the time. Charles, thanks so much for joining us today. And
thanks for having me.
you prepped this piano, and I'm loving what you did on this.
Oh,
it sounds
thank you.
amazing for an instrument from 1890. It's pretty incredible.
It was a pleasure to work on. And the story goes that Bob had me come in to tune Thomas Edison's piano. I was very excited because
That doesn't happen every day, huh?
no, and I've been a fan of recording history and a interested party since I was a kid.
And you have quite a collection of phonographs. What's the oldest recording gear you own?
My oldest piece of recording equipment is an 1898 Berliner gramophone, which was sort of the competitor to the cylinder phonograph at the time.
Got it.
You know,
A lot
kind
of
of
people
Mac
don't-
and PC style.
Right. A lot of people don't know that the precursor to the disc were the cylinders.
Yes.
And the reason why discs went out is just you could store them more easily. It's the main thing.
Yeah.
But it sounded, I mean, was there any sonic advantage to the disc initially?
It was more convenience. They were easier to manufacture because you could press them like
Right.
pancakes, and they were easier to store. They were a little louder because you could laterally. I think I don't know exactly.
More room for the grooves, huh?
Well, yeah. But you had to space them right. You
Yeah,
know, everything
exactly.
has its limits. And Edison was correct in noting that the surface speed was constant on a cylinder, whereas on a disc, as it gets towards the inside, if the rotation is steady, you have less surface per time,
Exactly.
and the quality reduces.
Absolutely. Now
So-
we even face that with LPs.
Yeah, I know. They have EQ curves that
Exactly.
adapt. So Edison was fairly stubborn in his resistance to using disc technology. I think it was only 1911 or thereabouts that Edison yielded and made discs. And his discs were still different in that he continued his vertical cut technology
Right,
that
right.
were also part of the
Instead
cylinder.
of the horizontal cut. The other thing that was interesting about Edison, I've been learning, is that he was more interested in the artists he chose, how well they reproduced on his technology, than the musical content. And indeed, on many of his cylinders, he wouldn't even put the names of the artists. He was more concerned with how they sounded, which is why you had mentioned
Yes.
that he recorded a lot of banjo because the transients could cut through
Yes.
the limitations of the recording medium.
Banjos and wood blocks, the things that sounded like
Yeah.
very quick with a quick decay, and the way there was actually a diaphragm that vibrated, much like the surface of a banjo. So and it was connected directly to the cutter, which would cut the wax
Right,
that made the groove, and there was no electronic interface in between up until about 1925. What I find interesting is you have a picture of Edison later in life listening to his assistant who's playing music. He was actually somewhat controlling of the music that he had on his label. He liked to choose what bands would record and what tunes would be recorded. I think his favorite song was "I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen." So there's a few of those. But he would sit and listen while somebody played.
So we had a dental professional confirm that these are indeed teeth marks. Is that right?
Yes. I didn't know what they were when I first saw them. I was just here to tune.
Yeah.
And I was halfway through tuning it. And I noticed that these marks on the top, usually when a piano's been played by a professional, especially one who plays in the sharp keys, there'll be marks on the fall board.
I've seen that a lot.
What are these marks up here?
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
puzzled by this, and suddenly I remembered having read somewhere, I don't remember where, that Edison, being almost completely deaf, would sink his teeth into the wood of his phonograph to listen to records, and I thought, that's what these are.
Well, what's really remarkable is that although this piano had some restoration along the way with new soundboard, new strings, hammers, damper felt, that nobody got rid of this. And thank goodness for that. So it has tremendous historical significance. Yes. And I've enjoyed playing it. It's a wonderful instrument. And I just want to thank both you and Bob for being able to experience this instrument and sharing it with everybody out there. Again, I'm Robert Estrin here at livingpianos.com, your online piano resource. Thanks so much for joining us today.